Black Lives Matter is one of the most popular political parties in America. So how is it doing? Increasingly not well, and I think it's easy to see why. In order to understand why Black Lives Matter is losing support, we first have to understand something about Black Lives Matter itself. There are two versions of Black Lives Matter here in America going by the name Black Lives Matter. There's Black Lives Matter the concept, and then there's Black Lives Matter the organization. Black Lives Matter the concept is an absolutely American virtue. It's the idea that all men are created equal and that we should judge each other based on the content of our character, not the color of our skin. Basically stuff only an idiot wouldn't get behind. Black Lives Matter the organization is not that at all. On the surface, it's an equality movement focused on racial justice. However, it's increasingly being looked at as a supremacist movement focused on gaining more power and influence through pressure. But it's not even that. What it really is a Marxist movement aimed at bringing down our current system. And that's not a tinfoil hat thing to say. Here's BLM co-founder Patrisse Cullors essentially admitting she and her colleagues are all trained Marxists.
The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
Now you can see this in the way that Black Lives Matter acts. Whenever one of their leaders gets in front of a camera, they constantly address issues from a critical race theory perspective, which is a Marxist ideal that revolves around irreconcilable differences between class structures. They're saying, essentially, that black people are a lower class than white people, and the only way that they can make them equal is to tear down the current capitalist system that keeps white people elevated. And in its place, a system of fairness and acceptance, of equality and justice. We have no idea what that's going to be yet. They don't really tell us what system that is. I mean, at least its leaders are pretty vague about it. Its followers, though.
We need a revolution in order to overthrow this system, bring a whole new communist world into being that can actually ensure the rights of black and brown people.
Black Lives Matter, the organization, doesn't want you to know that it's a Marxist movement. In fact, it tries to cover its tracks quite a bit. Recently, it deleted its What We Believe page, which actually called for the dissolution of the nuclear family. The idea here is that parents should not be able to raise a child and inject them with their values, but instead the child should be taken from them and raised with communal values, you know, those of all that equality, justice, and fairness and acceptance. But as the idea of them being Marxist started to get out, they decided to quietly delete that. So, Black Lives Matter is a political organization that is masquerading itself as a social movement for equality. In truth, it is radically left-leaning and has the most divisive politics. And Black Lives Matter is bleeding support. According to the Pew Research Center, Black Lives Matter movement has declined in support, going from 67% to 55%. That's a 12-point drop. Black Lives Matter has even taken professional sports hostage. And according to Gallup, there's been a 30% plunge in the approval rating for professional sports overall. Now, the politics are bad enough, but there are two things that are really wrecking Black Lives Matter, the organization. One is the riots, and I have covered ad nauseum how horrible these riots are. And according to research, 95% of the riots that happened in 2020 are connected to Black Lives Matter. The other thing that's really killing it is the fact that it does not care about black lives. We've seen time and again Black Lives Matter riots ripping apart black neighborhoods, killing black people, basically making victims out of the very people that they say that they're out there to protect. This is not going unnoticed by the American populace, who believes that black lives do indeed matter, but this organization clearly does not care about them. And as the populace catches on more and more and more, we're starting to see BLM support fall. So it's really their own fault. Black Lives Matter is not good for the black community, period. The faster we get this information out and the more people that learn this, the faster we can actually get to fixing problems that are actually plaguing our society. Black Lives Matter is still wildly popular, but it is continuously losing every single battle. Every single time someone gets out there and destroys a building or shoots somebody, every time this happens, they lose a little bit more credibility in our nation. So is Black Lives Matter losing? Well, they're trying their best. The truth is that America is not a Marxist country. Americans don't want to be a Marxist country, and a whole bunch of loud people trying to implement it are going to eventually lose this war. They might have done a good job of initially fooling a bunch of people into believing they were something they weren't, but now that illusion's disappearing very rapidly. Get the word out. See you next time.